So they're doing the work and making sure that they're not giving us a bad name, because one incident, and we are all judged for it. We need to stop treating police officers like in this country.
Today, we have another heavy hitter, a special guest, Police Lieutenant Joe Gamaldi, the Vice President of the National Fraternal Order of Police, also known as FOP. Look, Joe's no stranger to the front lines of the war on cops, with shocking statistics like one officer shot every 23 hours. The battle for safety rages on. About 3 months ago, Joe shared eye-opening figures. 378 officers shot, a staggering 68% increase since 2018, and 150 ambush attacks, and 46 officers murdered by gunfire in the line of duty. These aren't just numbers, they're the harsh realities of our officers face daily. As the voice of over 373,000 members of the FOP, Joe stands as a beacon of advocacy in the world's oldest and largest law enforcement organization. Today, we'll dive into the major challenges officers confront, from the hidden pitfalls of the disciplinary system to the deafening silence of the court of public opinion. Welcome to Internal Affairs, a police podcast. Let's go. Okay, here we go. Code 6 at scene with Joe Gamaldi. Did I say it right?
You got it right, hard G.
Okay, yeah, I got to get it right. Dude, you know what, bro? I totally 100% appreciate it. You're a busy dude. I can tell you here in the city of Los Angeles, we appreciate everything that you're doing, and I know you and I are going to have a really fun conversation. But before we get started, you know what? A quick shout out to all my sponsors. First and foremost, Savage Training Group. As you know, I'm a law enforcement instructor. I teach the internal affairs officer-involved shooting investigation course with my partner, our Sergeant James Tacchini. No death by PowerPoint, no check the box. The idea and the goal is to always come into class, engage, get that education, and you know what? Go back to your police agency and show everybody else and educate them as well. Then we have the Titan Group, a professional investigation firm. If you want to outsource and get really good IAs done, whether they're going to be police, fire, or any other type of complex investigations, please get a hold of the Titan Group, a professional investigation firm. And of course, you have Code 4 products, all your challenge coins, all your patches, and any of that sort, get a hold of Code 4 products. And last but not least, Code 7 coffee. I know Joe's going to probably say the same thing, the LT over there. You got to have coffee. I don't think there's a profession out there that does not drink coffee. And if you don't drink coffee, I suppose you're kind of weird, because I don't know. Some people say, I don't drink coffee. I don't know, but I got to have coffee. Code 7 coffee. All the websites are at the YouTube channel below for you to go ahead and look them up. So without further ado, LT, thanks for coming, man. I appreciate that. I'm going to start off by saying there's a lot that's going on as we look at the challenges with law enforcement in general. And I know you're going to touch a lot on that, but like anything else, we want to start off with, it's an internal affairs police podcast, which I'm sure you probably thought to yourself, what's this guy doing with an IA title, or, what's your thoughts about that anyways, just out of curiosity when you saw it?
Well, it's certainly a hook for me to take a look at it, but I was like, what's the Rat Squad want to have me on the podcast for? So I've been having that one in like my back pocket, just waiting to get started. But no, I mean, when you first reached out, it's like, why the hell does this guy want to have me on an internal affairs podcast? Like, I'm not interested in being under that spotlight. And then I started looking at some of your stuff. I'm like, okay, all right, I get it now.
You know what? You're not the only one, man. I had a partner of mine at work who goes, hey, Marlon, dude, why so bold? And you know what? One thing that I've learned as an instructor is, clarity wins, man. You got to be clear about your message. You want to be simple. I didn't want to give it a cute name or anything like that. It's exactly what it is. And the reality is, and you'll know this as we have this conversation, is that there's a lot of misconception about this particular type of function. I had this other gentleman from back east from New York, actually a U.S. Marshal, who ran a squad, and basically he had a female subordinate, an agent or an investigator, whatever you want to call them. Uh, I don't know their title, detective for that matter. And she was harassed, discriminated, just
Mm.
they put her through just the fire, bro. And so he decides to tell the bosses, and next thing you know, he gets an IA. And so yeah, and then he has a whole story. I'll tease it like that. But when he was going through LinkedIn and he saw this internal affairs banner, he's thinking to himself, I just flipped out of my chair, man. There's just no way. So I want to
Yeah.
come see you, Marlon, and tell my story. So, anyways, let's get to it, man. Look, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, rate the importance of internal affairs and why.
You know, I'm going to go with a solid 9, and I'm going to tell you why. It needs to be number one, anybody's ID, any departments needs to be the best that it can possibly be. And the reason why I say that is number one, shout out to any proactive ID investigators out there, the guys that get the complaint of an officer running drugs or shaking down drug dealers or doing any illegal things like that. Like they're doing the work because they're catching the people that are ultimately going to make all of us look bad, because we know now, like it used to be back in the day, if there was a crooked cop, it makes the local news. It is what it is. The agency deals with it. It's done. It is national news now anytime. So they're doing the work and making sure that they're not giving us a bad name, because one incident and we are all judged for it. Now, no other profession is treated like that. It doesn't matter that doctors kill like 250,000 people a year through malpractice. Everybody still goes to the doctor. But yet, when a police officer is dirty, suddenly it's the entire profession. You know what I mean? So that's the importance. But it's also important that you have an ID who is willing to track down every lead to make sure that we are clearing an officer when they've done nothing wrong, when they follow policy, training, and the law. And I think a lot of sometimes officers forget that, because like they like to joke, oh, IDs just have to get me, blah, blah, blah. But there are a lot of damn good ID investigators out there who are just there to say, if a cop is dirty, fine, I'll find him dirty. But if he's clean, I'm going to track down every lead and make sure his name is clear. And I don't think there's enough emphasis put on the fact that you need to investigate every lead as an ID investigator to make sure you can clear that officer. So instead, they get a exonerated on their record instead of a not sustained, because I don't think the general public has any idea how much it impacts an officer's morale and their mental state. Number one, the length of an investigation, because we should be shortening these investigations. It's absolutely ridiculous that they carry on for 6 months, a year, 2 years, because the mental strain on the officer. So ID is extremely important, but we need to make sure that the best people are there and that they're doing the best job they possibly can. Not just to, if officer did wrong, they did wrong, but to find out when officers have done it right and clear them.
You take away my mantra: no stone goes unturned.
Yeah.
If I do a T-shirt, please, I would appreciate it if I send it to you and you wear it in one of your appearances as a contributor in Fox. I would appreciate that, and say, hey, Marlon, kind of hook me up. The other thing I think about on a serious note, you know what? And I know you hear this a lot. Transparency, you know what? We keep preaching that, but we're like halfway there. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, I think transparency goes a lot ways. Like we have transparency with the community, right? And we tell them, hey, this is what's going on with this case or with this investigation or whatever. But like, how about transparency talking about that there's many more internal complaints than there is external complaints? Like we see that locally here in Houston, where there's way more officers complaining on other officers for an issue than, say, the public. Whereas people will think, oh, it's the public that has a problem with police officers. And no, actually, there's more internal strife than there is anything from the external. But another thing, there needs to be transparency with the officer. Like, how many times have you heard this, where an officer just gets a letter and it says, hey, by the way, you have an ID investigation? Doesn't tell him a freaking clue of what's going on with the case. It's just a letter that says you're investigating. That's you are putting that officer under unnecessary stress. Instead, you could say, it is from this incident at this time on this date. This is the allegation. Here's what we have. And that could be the first letter. So at least the officer can begin to wrap their mind around, okay, this is what's going on, and try to formulate and remember what exactly happened instead of just a random letter. And then Shorten these investigations down. Be transparent with the officer about the timeline, saying, hey, I'm going to interview you at this time. I've got these other interviews lined up. We believe we should have this wrapped up in 60 days. So that officer isn't stressed out at home with their family, by the way, who's also stressing about them being under investigation. Like, everybody preaches officers need to respect the community. We need to have the utmost respect for them. We need to treat them right. And that's what we should be doing. But how about we turn that mirror on ourselves, and those in leadership roles understand you need to treat your officers the way that you expect your officers to treat the public. Give them a little bit of transparency. Speed up these cases. Because I'll tell you one thing, as shorthanded as everybody is around this country, I've yet to find an IED division in any department that is not fully staffed. I'm just saying, we got our priorities right on these departments. So if you're fully staffed, let's wrap these investigations up a little bit quicker.
Yeah, and in addition to a very well eloquent response to that is, um, when I think about transparency, because God, I've been hearing that for so long. Oh my God, we need to be transparent. Here in the city of Los Angeles, transparency, transparency. But you know what? Let's talk about that officer, what they go through. No one knows. To your point, nobody knows what they actually go through. You know what? It's I say this all the time. One of my guests says it. I mean, spot on, 100. He says that, you know what? The punishment is not the penalty. The punishment is the process. Man, talk about another T-shirt we should make.
No,
So true. What do you
I
think?
almost interrupted you because you hit the nail on the head. 99 times out of 100, when I talk to officers that have been through the discipline process,
Uh-huh.
they're much more stressed out during that waiting period throughout the investigation than any discipline they receive on the back end.
Yeah.
And the worst part about it is that is within our capacity to change.
Yes.
We could change it right now. And we always talk about, oh, morale is so low in departments and all these outside factors impact our morale. And yes, that's true. But why aren't we looking at the internal factors that we could change? That anytime an officer gets a minor, policy violation, handle everything with training, or, handle it with, riding with an FTO for a day, or, whatever, education. There's so many other options. But instead, as departments, we are doing discipline the same way we have done it for the last 60 or 70 years. Take pay out of their paycheck and suspend them. Who are you hurting? You're hurting that officer's family. That's who you're hurting. So stop this archaic way of doing discipline, of basically just suspending them and taking money out of their pocket. Now, I'm not saying, let me caveat, because somebody will watch this and be like, Joe Gamaldi thinks no one should ever be suspended ever for anything. That's not what I'm saying. The major stuff, yes, you can still have the hammer and suspend them. But everything minor, you want to talk about morale? Let's talk about it. Stop disciplining them for minor crap. Stop doing it for minor crap that is conduct not alleged, where you were investigating the use of force, where that was completely BS. But then you found out that, they didn't buckle their seatbelt quick enough when they were leaving the scene. Whatever little ticky-tack BS they find, don't do that. You're treating these officers like children, and you're disrespecting them. Just stop with the nonsense. We can increase morale just by that. Oh, here's another idea too. How about you stop disciplining them for minor car accidents while they're on duty? I mean, Jesus, give me a break here.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, someone said it best. He goes, yeah, sometimes you'll investigate something and it's not so much I had a guest here talk about, here we are, this is the nature of the investigation, these are the allegations. But then all of a sudden, as you're investigating and you're getting ready to get served, there's an at charge. You
Yeah.
forgot to leave a business card. Or, you know what? We reviewed all this body worn video and you forgot to put your seatbelt on.
Yeah, that's how they get you.
Yeah, and you said it best. It's archaic. Look, if you and I were chiefs for a day, I would imagine one of the things that I would like to see is, you know what? Let's not make performance, when you're applying tactics, if you will, so much of a disciplinary issue. That's a performance issue. It's not a disciplinary issue.
Yep.
And yes, for the minor stuff, look, you keep like doing something minor, it's a violation of a policy. You didn't put your taser on your belt. Okay, got it. You did it like 10 times. Okay, cool. Guess what? Now we're gonna take some money out.
Yeah.
Something like that. But totally with you. Joe, let me ask you this. What is the one thing you think all IA investigators should know or do?
You know, I think it is so important that that they investigate every single lead, that if there is an opportunity to clear the officer, that they do it. You cannot be lazy if you're going to be an ID investigator, where it's just like, well, it's just enough where it's this word against that word, it's done. No, like, track down every lead as quickly as possible, so that if you can clear that officer, you can clear them, because it means a lot to them. It
Right.
means a lot to them mentally. It means a lot for their career, because a lot of these young guys that are coming on the department, and by the way, I really believe these young guys and gals are the best generation of police officers we've ever had.
Mm.
And a lot of old guys give me gruff about it, and guys in my generation do, but I'm like, you've never operated under the scrutiny that these officers are operating under. Never. None of us have.
I was going
Body
to
camera from day one,
that.
media looking into everything, every single person videotaping you on scene, all of this stuff they've never had to deal with. So have a little respect for them and investigate their cases fully. And I think another thing too is that I think ID investigators, and I don't want to put them in a bad position, but like, when someone comes in and makes a complaint and you can immediately look at the body camera and know it's, stand up for that cop, go to the commander of ID or whoever and say, this is complete BS. There is no reason we even need to get a statement from the officer on this. Done.
Yeah.
That really should be coming from chiefs. You know what I mean? They should be doing a lot of those things. And there are some departments that do that. But I'm just saying that as an investigator, take a proactive role in saying, hey, this is wrong. We shouldn't even have to put the officer through this. And maybe if enough people stand up and make a stink, some things will actually get changed.
Yeah, we have. I don't know over there in your part of town, but we have demonstrably false.
Mhm.
You've heard of that type of adjudication, where we can at the very get go just what, let's just DF this, and call it a day. Watch body
We,
worn.
we have something similar in Houston. Yeah.
Yeah, and but you know what? But still, we still have to go through this whole process. And I got to tell you, man, sometimes when I teach at Savage Training Group and we go up north to these smaller agencies in Northern California, they have an inquiry process, which I love. It's like, hey, Mr. Johnson, tell thank you for telling us that you saw two officers, take someone and throw them up against the wall. Well, guess what? We just got done watching body worn video. That's not exactly how it went down. If you like, you can come in and we can watch the body worn video together and call it a day. And then next thing you know, Mr. Johnson's just gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Also, unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway.
yes.
If a civilian comes in and makes a knowingly false complaint against an officer
Mm.
and swears to it, you should be charged. I'm sorry. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. You should have to feel a penalty from coming in and swearing out a document and lying about police officers and putting them through hell just because you had an axe to grind for whatever reason. You got a ticket, you got arrested, whatever. But like you said, demonstrably false, where none of this happened. I'm sorry, you're charged. And like, I don't even care. Like, you want to throw them in jail, which we know is not going to happen in the current climate we're in, but at least fine them. Make sure that there is some sort of penalty, so that, and because it's never been easier to file a complaint on an officer nowadays. You can do it at any single station. There's all these mechanisms to do it, but you have to make sure it's truthful. And then, you know what, I always love the statement back. Well, Joe, do you feel like an officer should be charged if they're lying on offense reports? Yeah, because they're lying. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, of course. Like, what are we talking about here?
Let me switch it to the other side of that. Do you feel when employee on employee makes complaints? I know you've dealt with that. And
Yeah, no,
do
there
you
there
feel
has
that's
to be a
weaponized?
penalty.
Do you
There
feel that?
has to be a penalty if you bring a false complaint against another officer, where it's just, again, we can prove without a shadow of a doubt that what you said happened did not happen. There needs to be a penalty. And whether that's a suspension or whether that's counseling or retraining or whatever, but we can't just have people filing frivolous complaints and putting people through hell. You're putting them through hell all because you have an axe to grind. That's not right. I mean, this is just, I'm just being a pragmatist. Like, we have to be pragmatic about this.
Right.
We want to take complaints seriously. And that means that people who are making complaints need to be truthful and honest to the best of their ability. We all know, the faults in human memory. But if you're just making something up, yeah, got to be consequences.
What's your thoughts on, and if you have witnessed weaponization of internal affairs?
I don't think there's a worse thing that could possibly happen in a department than the weaponization of ID, where you're going after people, especially where you can see it with certain chiefs or sheriffs or whoever's and they have opponents within the department, or they got an axe to grind, and they start just peppering and going after the same people over and over and over again. There is no bigger morale killer is when officers feel like there is no fairness and no consistency in the IED process. You cannot shoot yourself in the foot as a leader within a police organization quicker than when people don't believe it's fair and they don't believe it's consistent. And you need those two things in any IED investigation and any IED process. And without them, it doesn't work, because then they have no faith in the system that they're going to be treated fairly, or that, Marlon did the same thing I did. He got, a little velvet glove treatment, and I got the hammer. What the hell is that? And then the rumor mill gets spun up around the department, and it just gets worse and worse and gets completely out of control.
Totally. Thank you for sharing that. It's something that's been talked a lot, talked a lot about in a lot of my guests, and it's super important. Hopefully, by having this platform, we can kind of educate the public a little bit. Okay, trip down memory lane. Let's do this. So, see, Academy in 2005. Then you ended up in this will be New York, right? NYPD.
Yep, NYPD.
And then somehow, so after 3 years, you said, you know what, the hell with the Yankees, I'm going to Houston. Is that the way it went down?
You know what? I've told this story. I was living in a shoebox apartment, the type that's so small when you open your bedroom door, it hits your bed. And finally, one day I woke up and I was like, is this really what I want for my life? So I kind of looked around, see what you get for the money. And man, I went down to Houston to visit my brother at the time, and he showed me what you could get, like what house you could get for the money. And I was like, where do I sign? And the rest is history. And I came down here about 16 years ago, and it's been a blessing, man. Best decision of my life to come down here.
That's awesome. You made sergeant in 20, and they made lieutenant. Congratulations, not too long ago, about last year. Let me ask you this: isn't a sergeant like the best job in the department? What do you think?
So I will say this. I had the most fun I have ever had as a police officer, as a patrol sergeant. It was like, don't get me wrong, I did a lot of fun stuff when I was an officer, but there was something about being a sergeant and like being out on the street with the guys and gals, mentoring them, but also backing them up, also getting a little bit of action, but also getting a break during the day and not getting like killed with calls for service. Like all of those things just kind of coalesce. And I had so much fun as a patrol sergeant. And I'll be honest, I would have stayed there, but just to become a lieutenant, it was the increase in pension. And it was also just protection from liability, because, everybody knows being on the street all the time and responding to calls, you're one bad call away from being indicted, one bad call away from being arrested and being fired. And it used to be that if you were following policy, training, and the law, you were going to be protected. That used to be the standard. Well, it's not the standard anymore. You can follow policy, training, and the law, but if there's enough, anger out there, and there's enough things that get spun up, and enough grifters and politicians weigh in, suddenly your ass is on the fire, and you're getting fired, you're getting indicted. And I just, that was a stressor that I wanted to remove from my life. But I'll be honest, being a lieutenant, I really, really enjoy it. I like to say that I have the best night shift, not in Houston, in the country. And I will put them up against anyone, bar none. They are an exceptional group who work their off every single night. And I tell them this all the time, Marlon. They probably think I'm full of it because I tell them so often. I'm proud to be their lieutenant, to see the work that they put in every single night. It's incredible. They're just a great group. I love being a lieutenant, but it is an adjustment, because like some of these officers are, young enough to be a kid of mine. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Just generationally, they don't get all of my jokes sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes they make a joke and I don't even know what the hell they're talking about.
I'm with you. Hey man, you said something spot on. When I teach at Savage Training Group in our internal affairs officer involved shooting course, we do say it. Hey, you know what? You're one incident away from getting criminally filed on. That is reality. And here's the deal. You said it best. You can be doing everything in your mind, you know, your perception, what, you know, you have this these basic concepts, and you
Hmm.
got these real life variables, and things are moving and they're fluid, and then you feel as though what you're doing is the right thing because this is what you were taught, right?
Yeah.
And even then, still, you can end up losing your freedom. I mean, that's reality. And to that point, like you said earlier, you're right. This generation has a lot more at stake. They're more scrutinized. They're definitely way better than what I was 25 years ago.
Me too.
Were that is the honest truth. I mean, so I appreciate you saying that for various reasons, and I'm sure all your sergeants and your officers on your shift. I really appreciate you uh, being so flexible and at the same time being very positive about police work.
Yeah.
Um, Let me ask you this, because we're going to get into it a little. We were going to get into it a little later, but I don't want to forget, so I'll ask you now. Look, War on Cops. You're really big on being a proponent to really defend us, if you will. I mean, you come from, and I wanted to ask you this. So I do know it's the oldest FOP fraternity. The
Fraternal Order of Police,
thank
oldest police union in the country, also the biggest.
right three over north of 370,000 members.
Hmm.
Wow. How does that? How did you get that job, and how did that go about, man? Just
Well,
out of
it's funny,
curiosity.
when I joined the Houston Police Department, I
Hmm.
was fortunate enough to meet my mentor, Ray Hunt, who was like a father to me. And he was the vice president of the union, our local lodge there in Houston at the time. And I asked a bunch of questions during the academy, like, hey, how much are our pay raises? What are our benefits? And he's like, what is your name? And, he pulled me aside afterwards and said, hey, we might want to get you involved in the future. And I didn't think much of it. A couple of years later, he calls me and he's like, hey, we want you to be on the negotiating team. I'm like, sure. So I did that. And then when it was done, he said, hey, I'd really like you to run for a board position. I'm like, nah, I don't really want to be involved in the union. It was never on my radar. But I complained a lot during the process, just thinking we could do things better. And he goes, how do you expect anything to get better unless you get involved? And I was like, oh,
Ooh,
that that moment changed my entire career trajectory because he threw it in my face and called me out, basically saying, like, if you want things better, you got to be in the arena.
yeah.
You have to fight. Man in the arena, Frank,
I got
Teddy
I'm listening.
Roosevelt. You're gonna have to get in there and get dirty. You can't just throw bombs from the outside or complain. Like, get your there and do it. So I decided to, I got a board position shortly thereafter. After that, I ran for second vice president. So I was underneath him for about 5 years learning. Then I became the president of the local lodge. And I was not looking for the national position. That wasn't on my radar either. But people reached out to me like, hey, we think you're doing a great job. We think you'd be good for this. What do you think? So, of course, I had to, run it past my family and everything else. And then finally, I was like, all right, let's do it. And anybody who knows me, when I say I'm going to do something, like, I'm all in. It's that there ain't no half-assing in my family. Like, it's if you're gonna do it, we're gonna do it all in. And I won, and now I've been the national vice president for over 4.5 years. I'm in my third term, and I've just felt like my role as doing these interviews and being a spokesperson doing this is just to vocalize exactly what police officers are feeling right now, sitting in patrol cars, unfiltered to the public. None of this where you have police chiefs go on and they give you the rosy picture, or the retired sheriff that hadn't been in police work for years, but he's going to give you the perspective on law enforcement. No, unfiltered, straight from the mouths of police officers, straight from the mouth of somebody who still works night shift and puts a uniform on. That's what I wanted. And I think that the most important issue impacting us right now is the war on cops. We had 378 police officers shot last year. That is a 60% increase since 2018. This year alone, 2024, we've had over 115 police officers shot. We're outpacing the historic numbers from last year, and nobody's talking about it. I mean, we're talking about it at the FOP, but this does not seem to be a priority for anyone. And everybody loves to always bitch about a problem and not offer solutions. Every time I talk about it, I'm offering solutions. Number one, it starts with the leader of our country, President Biden, condemning the violence against law enforcement in all its forms. I'm still old school, and I believe that the president should set the tone for this country, regardless of what party you're from. He should be condemning the violence against law enforcement, number one. Number two, I got plenty for House Republicans too. They have yet to pass the Protect and Serve Act, which would make it a federal crime to knowingly assault a police officer. And that could take a lot of these cases out of these rogue DAs and activist judges' hands and instead in the feds' hands so that they can get real time, fed time for assaulting police officers. We need to stop the revolving door criminal justice system nationwide because 85% of cop killers have been arrested before. 71% are convicted felons. So we need to stop letting them out over and over again. And that's not just for police officer safety. That's for the whole freaking community because we've had 20,000 homicides 3 years running in this country, and we haven't seen those numbers since the mid-1990s. We also need departments focusing on training, specifically ambush training, because we had 115 ambush attacks last year, so that officers are prepared for these encounters. And just generally, we need to stop treating police officers like in this country. It is delegitimizing us, which makes it more likely that people are not going to respect us and the authority that we have within our country. So as a result, people are more likely to resist and more likely to fight. I mean, let's just be real. Dirtbags are thinking less and less of shooting us and less of killing us because they know damn well they ain't going to be held accountable.
No, yeah, no, totally, 100%. I was going to ask you, why is it that you think the increase north of 60%? And you kind of covered it, but any other thoughts as to why you think it's, besides the politics, is there any other element or any other angle that you can share with us that would contribute into that increase?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, the politics plays a huge role.
Yes.
Painting us as the enemy at every opportunity. We just had that nerd actor. I don't know. He plays Jack Reach. I don't even remember the guy's name. Alan, whatever the frick his name is. He's all roided out on steroids too. And he's bad mouthing police officers, saying we murder people every single day and we get away with murder, blah, blah. He doesn't even know the statistics. He's talking about how we shoot thousands of unarmed people. We shot 12 unarmed people last year. Like it's just the typical BS talking points. But people see that from someone like him and they think that's the truth. Yeah. So again, it drives a wedge with law enforcement, but we're also being shot more because crime and violent crime in this country is just up. And who's always in the middle of it? Us. Yeah. And it's because of the revolving door criminal justice system, because of bail reform. And, when they touted these criminal justice reforms like bail reform and, giving deferred adjudication to people who are shooting people, what did they say? They said, this is for our underprivileged communities. It's going to make them more safe. It's going to give them more opportunities. Well, guess what? The exact opposite has happened because the homicide rate for Black men in this country is now 12 times the rate of everyone else. And no one seems to be talking about that. Yeah. Our urban communities have been ruined for a generation because of this revolving door criminal justice system. So when you mix that all up in a pot, it's not hard to find why there's a war on cops in this country and why there's so many of us that are being shot.
Yeah, no, spot on, LT. I really appreciate that. Look, it is Internal Affairs, a police podcast, and this is the part where you get to tell me, well, not me, you get to tell the audience, come on, man, share a little Aya story. I know you got, and we talked about this. You got some things, and talk to me.
I got two because I want to be fair to y'all. Because I got one where y'all knocked out of the park, did a great job. One, not so much. So we'll start with the bad one first, okay? Yeah. So I'm training someone on night shift. I was a trainer, and we stop a car, failure to maintain single lane, had a headlight out, didn't signal a turn. We're thinking DWI, whatever. We stop the car, get the guy out. Turns out he passes the DWI test. I mean, we think he'd probably been drinking. We call the district attorney's office, which is something we have to do in Houston. They refuse to take charges. We find a sober driver anyway, just to make sure to drive the car home, the whole 9 yards, right?
Okay.
Well, this dude files a complaint because he was a law student. So, of course, we always know law students are going to file complaints on officers. Yeah. So he goes and files a complaint, and he claims a whole multitude of things. We racially profiled him. We cursed and yelled at him. By the way, I'm training a rookie who I don't know and know nothing about. So why would I be cursing and yelling and screaming at somebody in front of somebody I don't know? But that's besides the point. So he makes all these accusations. Whatever, I don't care. I can't prove or disprove. We didn't have body cameras back then. But
Uh-huh.
there was one little part where he screwed up. He said that I took his iPod, and by the way, I'm dating myself now because it's an iPod that he had at the time. And he said that I smashed it into the pieces on the trunk of his car. I smashed his iPod, Marlon.
Okay.
And I said, okay. So I get all these questions from the ID investigator, and of course I answer them all. And I go, how about he produces a picture of the iPod? Or better yet, brings it in. Because if a police officer smashed my iPod and I was making this accusation, wouldn't you have a picture of it, Marlon?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you have at least taken a photo?
Oh,
You'd
absolutely.
probably still have the pieces of it. Now,
Yes.
I know I didn't do it. So two things were going to happen. And I was willing to risk it. Either this dude was going to go out and buy a brand new iPod and smash it, which screw you, I got you for making a false complaint, and I would have taken the suspension for it if he produced it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or he wouldn't be able to produce it because it didn't happen. Well, the ID investigator never followed up. And I ended up just getting a not sustained.
Yeah.
But that's BS
Yes.
because I should have been exonerated.
Yeah.
I didn't do what he said. And had you dug further, you would have realized he had no credibility as a result.
That's what I was going to say. If he's telling you that part of the story, I can tell you, working internal affairs, as I'm turning this case in, I would have told my LT, well, I don't know about this guy's credibility. I mean, come on, an iPod. You should be able to. You should be able to say, "Hey, you know what? Look what this officer did."
Exactly.
Or take a picture of it, and yeah.
So that
Bothered
was
to appeal it at all, or did you when you got skelly? Or
once you get not sustained in my agency, that's it. There's nothing because I didn't receive any kind of penalty, but it's just not sustained. It should have been exonerated.
Yeah.
So that's one where you guys didn't really turn over every stone. All right.
That's right. Unstoned. Yeah, it was unturned.
Yeah, unturned. But the next one is where I want to give a ton of credit to ID investigators. So this is back when I was in the NYPD. Me and my old partner got a call to a like a local soccer stadium that was in the area. Guy said he got threatened with a gun. The guy waits with us outside the stadium. We get some other officers, points the dude out as he's coming out. We grab him. He produces the gun and sticks it into my partner's stomach. We're in a huge crowded area. Me and another officer jump on the gun and jump on the dude. We throw him on the ground. We get him into custody. We have to get him out of this huge crowd. Great arrest. We recover the gun. All good. They take charges, all this other stuff, right? This guy makes a complaint. And he says we called him every name in the book. We beat him up. He never had a gun. The whole 9 yards, right? ID does a great investigation, interviews people that were at the stadium, interviews these people, blah, 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 exonerates us of the whole thing. Okay. Now, here's the interesting part. This dude, well, actually, an attorney that he hires files a lawsuit against me and my partner with 1 day left on the statute of limitations to file the because he really cared about it so much. So he sues us. Now, if you know anything about New York City, and any NYPD officers are going to know when they're watching this, they always settle. They'll always just be like, hey, here's $5,000, just go away, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we told the lawyer, like, this is complete BS. They've made everything up. Do not settle. Don't settle. And to their credit, they're like, we're not settling. Like, we're ready to go to court. We got our people lined up, blah, blah, blah. It was such a story that they made up. He didn't even show up to court with his attorney the first time. And the attorney actually had to withdraw the case. And I still have the printout from the withdrawal of the case. But the crazy thing is, because of the laws in New York State, now people can get complaints that were even found exonerated on my record. And I had some nerd reporter that did a story on me, a hit piece a while back, actually say like, oh, well, he had all these accusations from this gentleman. He was exonerated from it. But it's like, clearly this guy was BS. ID's exonerated me. He had to withdraw his lawsuit, but it still follows you. So that's still aggravating. But kudos to those ID investigators who kicked over every rock, left no stone unturned to make sure that we were clear to that case. And that was, and it means something to you as the officer too, because you didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, and it builds the trust that, the rat squat's not that bad.
Yep. And I got an award from the NYPD for that one too. So it all got wrapped up in a nice, neat bow.
Talk to me, worst and best. I hate this part of the episode, but of course it's important because again, we want transparency. Tell me something something you experienced, an incident that was just, that you can't remember, to this very day, you think it's just the worst horrific incident that you drove, you were a part of, or that you were involved.
Mm. For me, it's always something involving kids.
Yes.
It's always kids. Probably in particular an accident, just an accident scene where
Mm.
4-year-old would, and at the time I had a child right around the same age. My daughters were the same age. So for whatever reason, that's like burned. You know what I mean? And like I've had worse that I like scenes that I guess are more stressful.
Yeah.
I was the first to a scene where an officer was shot as a sergeant,
Okay.
and it was extremely hectic. Putting a tourniquet on the officer's leg, making sure we're coordinating, getting an ambulance out there. And thankfully, he was fine when it was all said and done. And that was certainly like the most stressful.
Yes.
But this was probably the most, the one that just sticks out the most, where I can always remember it. Remember the face, remember the
Of course.
body, remember the car, remember everything.
Yeah.
And I
A
don't.
horrific tragedy.
Yeah, it doesn't it burns something in your mind that just doesn't go away. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So that's probably worse. Best experience as a police officer. Oh God, there's been so many great memories.
I can imagine.
So I've got a lot of like highlights of arrests, but everybody hears their war stories and nobody cares. So I'm not gonna go that route. Instead, I'm gonna go training as a sergeant. So I was very fortunate. I keep a tight circle. I only got a couple best friends. One of my best friends was my training sergeant. So for 2 weeks, imagine riding in a patrol car with your best friend who's training you to become a sergeant. And imagine just laughing for like the entire 8 hours while also learning something. He was he's a lieutenant now, but he's probably the best patrol sergeant I've ever worked with ever.
Gotcha.
But just the stories we would tell each other, the amount of laughs we had. I mean, it's such a highlight. We still talk about it all the time. That was just such a great feeling. Also working a hurricane of years ago. This was Hurricane Ike, where I had an old officer, and I'm still friends with him to this day, and I'm friends with his kids now, riding together, doing 12-hour shifts for like 3 weeks straight, and just him imparting a shit ton of knowledge on me, like life knowledge as well.
Right. Right.
Moments like that much more stick out to me now. Like that camaraderie and those fun times stick out as the best, rather than the like the best war story you have. You know what I mean? Like I was in a shooting back in the NYPD, and like it happened. It is what it is. I've got other great war stories, but I don't know. For me, as I get older, it's those camaraderie and those prolonged times where you're just hanging out and having a blast. That's the best time for me. That's what I will look back on fondly.
That's awesome. Yes. There's nothing like writing, and here in LAPD, we have a two-man unit, right? They call an A
Yeah.
car. And those conversations
Ah,
with your training officer and your partners are just, it's a gem, man. You're
yeah.
definitely right. Spot on as the best moments. Look, before we, kind of get ready to close it up, I just got some curiosity here. I
Yeah.
like to know, in the academy in 2005, was your body fat percent the same as it was when I looked in your, wasn't too long ago that you had something on your Instagram where you were, in reality, I was hoping you were do the interview without your shirt off so we can show off. Because I'm curious to know, was it 3% then and it's 5% now, or what are we talking about here,
So
bro?
let's be clear. If you feel like the views would be better for the video, I can pop it off. I can take it off. We can do it. No, no. Back in the day, I was not as lean as I am now. I've just really dialed it in over the last few years. Just thinking about that, the average life expectancy of a police officer is 58, 59 years old, and just really focusing on my nutrition. Staying at a calorie deficit, prioritizing protein. And something that I started to do on my Instagram was just put out fitness and nutrition videos, because I saw a lot of people trying to sell, coaching stuff to officers for
Yes.
fitness and things like that. And I don't begrudge any of them to do that. That's great that they want to start a business. But some of them were going out of the angle of, you're a fat piece of and you're going to die, and your partner's going to die, and your family's going to be alone, and it's all your fault. Also, buy my stuff. And I didn't like the way that it was done.
Yeah. Totally.
Shaming people isn't
No.
the way to get them into shape. And a
No.
lot of people just don't know. So I
Yeah.
decided, you know what? I'm gonna just put this information out for free. So I do those videos, a couple a week just to make sure I can educate officers on fitness, nutrition, and hopefully it's making a difference.
So are you that like are you that LT? Well, you're their boss. Are you that guy with your whole unit? They're like, dude, let's go. We're gonna go eat. Let's do it. And you're that guy that are you the one that brings like all your containers or like, you're the one
So
that says, you know what, guys, we're good. I already ate, have a nice time. Talk.
not quite that bad, but like I like to buy my guys and gals like something every few months. So the last go around, it was energy drinks and like protein cookies and protein chips. So I don't do like the pizza parties, you know what I mean, that everybody likes to put on. Instead, I focus a little bit more on that.
Wow. Yeah. See, these are more important things that I wanted to ask because I just met you and I've been, following you and watching you. And I appreciate your time and all that. One last thing before we conclude. Speaking of false statements, I think we talked about this a little earlier. Um, were you conflicted? Because I take it you're a Yankee fan for that.
I'm actually a Astros fan now.
No, I understand that. But if I may interject,
Yeah,
you're from New York. I
I
mean,
was a Met fan, and I still am.
okay.
I still
Okay.
cheer for the Mets, and I cheer for the Astros still.
Okay. And then my other question was Jets or Giants?
Jets. If you're from New York, you're Jets, Mets, Islanders generally,
Okay.
or you're Rangers, Giants, Yankees.
Okay. Because if you were a Giant, where is that at? It's in New Jersey. Why is Giant Stadium in New Jersey? I really don't get that. That's a whole different.
Who knows? Yeah, I mean,
Don't you think that was a false statement when Altuve, around third base and Major League Baseball should hire me to
whoa,
talk
whoa,
about no
whoa.
stone goes unturned. I really
Marlon, excuse me, sir. He had a new tattoo that he did not want anyone seeing. This is clearly documented. He has said it on the record several times that his wife did not want him exposing that tattoo. And you can clearly see him saying no to his camisa. Don't rip it off. For that reason, sir, Altuve is a Houston treasure. And I will not have you bad mouthing him. He didn't listen to the trash cans. Haven't you listened to his statements? They weren't banging the trash cans when Altuve was up. So, sir, you're completely off base right now. Everybody cheats in Major League Baseball. It's just the Astros were the only ones that were caught. They were thrown out as scapegoats. We know what happened. But that's all I got to say on the matter. I want my union attorney before I answer any further questions regarding the Astros cheating scandal.
What a scandal! I got to
By the
tell
way,
you,
side note,
yeah,
for anybody that's wondering, I am 1 inch taller than Altuve, and I have the pictures to prove it.
Roger that. I really appreciate that. To your point, I learned something new. I didn't know any of that, and I got to tell you, I mean, from LA, bro. We don't get news from Houston, so I get it. I got a really good Navy buddy of mine who's a diehard Houston Astros. We're just going on. We just text each other and we have so much fun with it. Joe, you know what? Look, it was such a pleasure getting to know you and talking to you. Look, parting words. We're going to conclude here. Anything you would like to add or any advice you have for anyone who's watching to become a police officer, a young sergeant that's trying to make lieutenant, a lieutenant who's trying to make command staff? What do you got in mind, man, so you can give them?
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, if you are a supervisor on any police department, it is your job to keep morale up for your officers. And I know that you may not like what the chief is doing. You may not like what the chief is saying or whatever's going on in the command staff. You can't bring that to your officers, like that energy.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that you are keeping morale up. Nobody told you to take this job. Like nobody told you to promote. Nobody told you to take the test. You made a decision. And that comes with the responsibility of taking care of your officers and doing your best to keep morale up. And, you'll see these same supervisors complaining about the way the chiefs treat them, but then they treat their officers the same exact way. That's being a hypocrite. So yeah, it's your job to keep morale up, even if everything in the department is not going well, because the individual officer's existence it sucks. I mean, they're on night shift. They got bad days off. They can't take a day off when they need because they're understaffed. They're running call to call. Do the best that you possibly can to make it enjoyable for them and to remind them that what they do matters and that they matter and that you care about them. Like,
Yes.
that means so much to officers and to the individual officer that's out there right now. Know that what you do matters. Know that I appreciate what you do. There's a whole country of people that appreciate you. Yeah, there is a vocal minority that will scream and yell and call us murderers and all that. Don't internalize that shit.
Yeah.
You're a hero every day that you show up to work because with all the noise, with everything that's going on, 750,000 of us still put the uniform on every single day and serve our communities. And that is an accomplishment just showing up every day with everything that's gone on. So no, you are a hero. You are making a difference and what you do matters. Don't listen to the outside noise.
Awesome. Hey, man, I feel like I've known you. We can have a really good time anytime when I go out to Houston. Let's make sure
I'll take you to an Astros game. Let's go.
that's fine. I have no problem with that. And I was going to say, if you ever in LA, man, look me up. I would love to have you. Taco Tuesdays. I can't let you go, man. I got to give you some good. I'm from Peru, born and raised, and I can tell you Peruvian food is delicious, and it might exceed your calorie intake.
All right. That's all right. I can always have a good cheat meal with a friend.
There you go. Exactly. Hey, LT, thank you so much for your time, and let's keep in touch, man.
Man, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Take care, man. And on that note, like always, please be safe out there, and don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.